Well, let's talk about you. I didn't grab your bio and all that insanity, so I know most of my community has heard me talk about you in some shape or form, but they probably don't know how you got to where you are and how this became a thing. How did a Navy guy wind up launching this incredible technology for authors?
Sure. Well, first off, I just want to say that I'm dressed a little unprofessional today, but today's the first day of baseball, and
Yay!
I had to represent. So go Red Sox. As you guys can see, I'm a really big baseball, especially historic baseball fan. So, anyways, that's why. But
Um,
with that said, it's funny is that I actually grew up with dyslexia or form of dyslexia, and so I've always thought to myself that I wasn't destined to be a writer just because in class I really, really struggled. And I remember, I used to get all A's, except in English, my family and I would celebrate when I got a B. So, you grow up with your life believing that you're not destined to be, you're not meant for writing. But it doesn't mean that the desire to write just goes away. So the thing is that I really went into science and technology. I was a nuclear engineer for the U.S. Navy. I then became a military diplomat as well. But I've always really leaned towards technology just because it was easier for me.
yeah.
However, though, the military sent me to Korea for a 2-year assignment, and it was one of those where I could not bring my family just because of the lack of support of where I was going. And so my wife and I had this really important discussion, and she said, Dave, what are you doing? Like, are we doing this because you want to be an admiral? There's some kind of like giant goal, or are you just doing it as a job? And I said, it's a really good question. I don't know. I don't think so. And she's like, great. Well, then let's figure out what we as a family should do. And so we started looking at it. And I didn't want to go from one traveling 9-to-5 job to another because otherwise I would, be doing the same thing, just moving on to a different position or something. So we started looking for ways to kind of build an online business, which we really felt kind of jived with what we as a family wanted to do. And when you're in Korea, you can't just build like, brick and mortar. There's a lot of businesses you can't do because while everybody in the United States is awake, I'm asleep and vice versa. But books became that one opportunity where I could publish books on Amazon, make money, while I sleep. We all know the gist of it, right? The problem though was I was no Ernest Hemingway. I was still the same guy with dyslexia who always switched up my words and really struggled with some of the things that I deal with in it, hand-eye coordination and stuff. And but I had this one lesson I learned in diplomacy, and it's you don't have to be the greatest speaker in the room, but if you're the guy who has the answer, then you're the most important person in the room. And so when I started to apply that kind of mentality towards books, it really helped me, someone who struggles with writing, to get in front of people and actually help them. So I started to really investigate in Amazon, how do you figure out what people want to know? What are people searching for on Amazon and not being served the information they need? And so from that point, I started writing books that answered their questions and that served that pre-existing market. And from there, I all of a sudden started finding that I didn't have to be Ernest Hemingway, but I could help people and I could, make people happy. I was getting 5 stars and that gave me, all the confidence in the world to keep writing. Now, I'll tell you this, the first ever blog post I wrote, I still have it published and I leave it up there as a reminder of how far I've come. And through honing my craft and working on it every day for years, my writing has started to become something where it's not Ernest Hemingway, but I'm much more proud of it. And I think that it just has gotten better over the years. And so combining those things, as well as the lessons I've learned in publishing, marketing failures, and always trying to stay on top of the new things that Amazon does, has really guided me towards where, I created Kindlepreneur, my website, as well as PublisherRocket.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the journey of writing and improving your craft, because I think that's something that a lot of authors really don't realize their first time out the gate, is that nobody was fantastic and sold a bestseller their first time out the gate. Even the overnight successes generally weren't overnight successes.
Right.
So I think that's a huge thing. No matter how many tools you're working with to help you sell your book, if the writing is not good, if the book isn't good, it's still going to be problematic. So keep it on
Yeah.
that journey.
a general scale that I like to kind of imagine, and again, this isn't perfect, but it's, you know, the better writer you become, the more you can write just about anything.
Mm.
But when you're really first starting off, if you really want to get in front of people, you need to answer their question. And so, you know, like for example, Ernest Hemingway, and I'm just going to keep on that example since I've already said it. He could honestly write just about anything he wanted, and it would probably be epic, and people would love it and buy it, right? But me, you know, dyslexic me, started my first book. If I tried to write anything I wanted, it probably would have crashed and burned.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me, I started on this process of addressing a market and making sure that I really answered people's questions, and then using that to launch and grow and improve my writing over time. And I think that it doesn't apply to everybody, but it's a mental image that I kind of use when I think about what it's like to become an author.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide, you're writing, you're building your craft, you're doing these things. At what point in time did you decide to get into the software development and tools for authors?
Yeah, so I was using these extensive Google Sheets, these Excel sheets, to kind of do all of my research. And I had these crazy calculations that helped me to quickly find the right optimal blah, blah, blahs. And when I started writing on Kindlepreneur, I tried to send these sheets and I tried to give this kind of information out. And the problem was that most are not technically crazy like I am.
Yeah.
And the thoughts of using Excel sheets to figure these things out was just not cool. So that's when I said, well, what if I were able to kind of take all of this and put it inside a program so that it is effective and efficient? More importantly, I had what I called the Muzzy factor. Muzzy is my grandma's name. And I figured if Muzzy could figure it out, then I've done it right. And so we just kind of kept going through the Muzzy factor, Muzzy factor, Muzzy factor. And so we finally got it to where, yes, it's intuitive, it's clean, it's understandable, the process. And so that was the hurdle.
Yeah, well, first I want to say, for those of you who are just joining us or just popping in, this is Dave Chesson of Kindlepreneur, KDP Rocket back in the day. And for those of us who have been with him as it's evolved now, PublisherRocket, which I want to talk about that evolution as well. But I just want to say, if you don't know him and don't know his website, you need to go immediately there and get on his list and follow. Hands down, one of the best sources of information in the industry, I think. Every time I have a question and I go to Google it, it doesn't seem to matter what it is. How do I pitch a book to an agent? I don't know. It could be so like, and Kindlepreneur, your website is one of the first ones that pops up. All of the, where do I submit book promos for free or paid? Like, it doesn't matter what the question is, you have an answer, which is amazing. But
Well, and that kind of goes back to what we were discussing is that I've always looked at, hey, what questions do people have? But also as a writer, I keep running into questions. I also use, like, when people email me at Kindlepreneur and I keep seeing the same question or so, I'm like, oh, we need to address that.
Yep.
I just had a video that I posted on YouTube talking about what my thoughts were on pre-orders and the do's and don'ts, and that's,
yep.
yeah, well, it's just, and so it's really neat because, for one, I come up with my own questions or my own problems. That's how I created the book description generator. Was I kept publishing the wrong HTML and my book descriptions look bad. I'm like, wait a second, I've got programmers. Let's make this happen, So it's been really cool to be an author and to have programmers at my disposal.
So is that a new program, or is that in part of PublisherRocket? Because I haven't used that yet and I need it.
Yeah, no, it's a free program on Kindlepreneur.com. If you just type in book description generator, it should show up #1 in Google. But what it is, so for anybody listening, when you write your book description, you can actually put in some hardcore HTML and make it look a certain way. And that's why when you're looking at certain authors' book descriptions, you'll see bold, you'll see bigger words, you'll see smaller words, you'll see spacing, symbols, all of these things that they can do. Well, the problem is you either A, have to be a really good HTMLer, or B, you have to go through and publish and republish over and over again until you get it right. Because let's face it, we've forgotten, to close a bold tag and it turns your entire half of your book description into a bolded mess. So we created this, what we call a WYSIWYG. which is what you see is what you get. And when you put your book description into this online tool, it's free. We don't even require email.
Nice.
And then you can highlight things, click buttons to make it look the way you want. And exactly what you see right there on the screen is exactly how it will look on Amazon, because we even adopt their CSS, which means we make the font exact the same, the size, the full, all the stuff. And then what's even cooler is that when you're done, you click get my code, copy that code, just paste it into your book description on KDP, and you're good to go. But we just came out with a new update to it where you can
Nice.
now do the same thing for Barnes& Noble and
Ooh.
Kobo, and also your editorial reviews on Amazon. And so you can just click the button and it will, again, immediately switch it to whatever it would look like on Barnes & Noble or Kobo. Tweak it the way you want, copy the code, throw it onto those markets as well, just like that.
For those of you who have never had the pleasure of spending an entire day trying to get your book description to look the right way with with Amazon's editing tool, you do not understand what a phenomenal resource this is, and for free. That's incredible. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's talk about it's just I don't know. I'm flabbergasted by the amount of content you and your team put out there and how good it is. You are one of my key references when I go out for things. But the
Well,
the
thank
the
you.
Rocket program, it took me. I will say, I heard you talk about it years ago. I bought it. I think I might have been one of your first people to buy. I don't know, maybe not, but I feel like I was, back in the day. But I didn't really know how to use it, and I'm kicking myself now that I'm really aware of what it can do. And of course, you guys have added some new tools and new things, but I just used it today. We have a new book. It's a genre that a category that I haven't published before, and it's incredible how it helps you figure out because the first keyword that I put in, all the books that it brought back, I was like, oh, heck no, that's totally wrong. And if that's what I had chosen as my main keyword on Amazon, no wonder nobody's buying the books if they're
Right.
so.
Yeah, a lot of it is just to demystify. I mean, before Rocket, authors were basically just guessing. They were throwing some words up there and they were kind of hoping that it works. We took that away and we were like, here are the words that people on Amazon are typing in. Here are the number of people typing that in, as well as here's how much money books are making that show up for those keywords. And then you could look even deeper and see those books and try to understand what it is you're going against, what competition, which books are you going to be sitting next to. That could be a good thing or that could be a really bad thing. And that was just the keyword feature. Like you were saying with the categories, my biggest problem back in the day was that there are 14,000 Amazon categories. That's books and ebooks. There's no list anywhere. They don't have them listed. Like you could do this crazy choose your own adventure, click, 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 and maybe you can see things, but they aren't listed. And for those of you who have published a book, when you go to publish your book on KDP, they say select a category and they give that pop-up box and then you can choose them. Those actually aren't Amazon categories. Those are called BISACs. It's an international standard category code. It's for supply chain logistics. But what you select there gives Amazon an idea of what category they will put you in. So for those who see that list, just know that that's not the categories. But now with Rocket, we put all 14,000 categories in there, and you can use filters to find the right kind. And we're actually always adding more filters. We're adding one for fiction authors, to just click and they'll just only see that, which can be fiction categories. But on top of that, we've also told you for each one of those categories, you can see how many books that day you would need to sell in that category in order to be the new #1 book.
Wow.
So now you can even organize them from easiest to bestseller to hardest. And again, it's just taking all the guesswork out, taking all of that time, energy, and effort you need to find that pertinent but obscure category. And with the process that Amazon has, you can now select over 10 categories for your book.
Right.
You don't have to just select the 3 that you start with. So there's just a lot to it that we just really wanted to make it easy. And again, just demystify what Amazon's doing.
So I recorded my screen today when I was going through the process, thinking about this interview and then wanting to be able to share that so I could show what I, as a basic level user, did with it and how I narrowed down a couple of the categories, but how do you get to that part where you see what you need to do to be number one? Which button did I need to press to get there? Because I didn't do that.
Yeah, no problem. So when you're on the category feature and you've either used the search box or you've used a main category to then look at all the categories listed, what you can do is that there's the columns that say the Amazon bestseller of the number one book and then the number of books sold. And so that column is the number of books you would need to sell in order to be the new number one. So you can click that column and it will arrange it from easiest to hardest, just like that.
Well, and it's really important for authors to know this kind of information, because if you're going out there and you're trying to prep your launch and you're trying to see like how competitive is a category, exactly what do I need to do to be to the top of it? What are these things going to do for me? Those are all really, really important points of data to kind of have in mind as you're going forward if you're looking to get in the top of the category. Can you explain to people why it's important to be at the top of the category? Yeah. And it's not so that you can say, I'm an Amazon bestseller.
Well, so there are a couple of reasons why a number one bestseller position does help. The first thing is that when you become a number one bestseller, you get the bestseller tag. And that tag not only sticks on your sales page, it also sticks in the results. So say, for example, you write a book on, how to quit smoking, right? Now, I type into Amazon how to quit smoking, and I see a whole bunch of books. Your book somewhere in there, though, is listed, and there's that little thing that sticks out, right, that anybody scrolling would see, and it says bestseller. That immediately says to me, the shopper, that this must be one of the best books on the subject, because obviously other people have been buying it, and therefore there's what we call social proof, right? People don't want to invest in a book nobody else has, right? Because it's like, oh, hey, now, But when you see bestseller tag, when you see number of reviews, those things help to alleviate any anxiety I may have that this isn't the right book. So it makes your book stick out from the rest of them. Then when I go there, it's like, again, a testimonial in a way, saying that people have been purchasing this book. And so you're going to see higher conversions come because of the bestseller tag existing. Now, interesting enough is that the bestseller tag, you could be a bestseller for some particular category, and that doesn't matter. The bestseller tag still sits there, okay? So you can be the number one bestseller book in all of fantasy, and it just says bestseller. Or you could be the number one bestseller in fantasy, lit RPG, game lit, and guess what? You get the bestseller tag. So that's a really big part of it. And a lot of things in bestsellers kind of changed. That's why it's really good to go after 10 categories using the process. We have videos in the tutorial page for PublisherRocket to help people on exactly how you add new categories, as well as get Amazon to change them. But maybe right now, the category you selected only requires 5 books, right, to be sold that day to be a number one bestseller. And then tomorrow, some big markety book comes out in that category, and you lose it. Now it's like 40 books that day. But, a week later, it's different. And so that's why these things are really important to kind of put in there. You will definitely hit your bestseller tag, but you can have more options and opportunities to still maintain the bestseller tag over time, so long as you selected your categories right.
That's really good information. I know several years ago when I interviewed you, we were talking about using and answering people's questions is kind of along the same line, but using the data like this to decide before you even write the book if it's a good thing to do.
Right.
And yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of those things where it's like people will always say, I have this book idea. I'm like, great. And if it's their first book, how many people are looking into that book idea? How many people want to read a book on that, that they're proactively going on Amazon to look for it? I think that's a really big deal. Somebody was writing a memoir on dealing with their pets, their dog dying. And the thing is that there's nobody going on to Amazon saying pet death memoir, right? Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't people who would love a book on that. It doesn't mean that there aren't people who would benefit from a book on that. But if you do your research, you'll find that nobody proactively goes to Amazon to search for a book on that. Now, this gives you 2 very important pieces of information. The first is that if you do write that book, you cannot depend on Amazon to sell it for you because they can't, organically send people to your book. They're not going to help. So then this tells you the second part, which is really important, which means that if you do decide to write that book, you need to create more, shall we say, proactive marketing. That's where you work to get the book in front of people that might not be shopping for it, but are the right fit. This is things like Amazon ads. This is things like Facebook ads. This is things like, having an email list or guest book, like all these things where you work to put your book in front of them. And again, it doesn't mean that the research says you shouldn't write it, but now you have a much better marketing plan because you know that you can't depend on Amazon to do that. And so for this particular person, she focused on her Amazon ads and had a huge, huge score on a keyword that I didn't realize, which was a dog's life. At the time, that movie had just come out, and I think I've watched some of it, but I'm pretty sure it's about kind of like the dog reincarnates as a different dog, right? It dies and comes back as another dog, but it's always trying to go back to the original master, to help them in life, right? Well, it was just coming out at that time. There was a lot of people, really into that sort of thing. And so her book getting in front of those shoppers on Amazon looking for the movie, she was able to get a lot of clicks because she was getting in front of the right market. They weren't looking for her book, but they were the right market. And she had a great success with that launch. So to go back to it, you can use this kind of research to figure out if there is an existing market on Amazon. And if the answer is no, now you know how to strengthen your marketing plan and still write that book, but see better results than publishing and hoping Amazon does something.
Yeah. Well, and to that note, with Amazon helping people send your book that way, you also teach a lot about using AMS ads. And I think these days, what are the numbers these days? I mean, it's so many millions of books on Amazon that if you are a new author and don't already have a following and people don't know to look for your book, and, you almost, I don't know if you disagree or agree with me, but you almost have to use ads these days to really make sure that it's getting, at least in the beginning, to get it up there. So are you still doing, I know I've shared your free AMS course all over the globe. Is that still available for people?
It is, absolutely. Okay. And I've updated as well because Amazon keeps changing. And so I want to make sure that the stuff that I'm teaching is in line with the new features, the new focus and things like that. I really think that Amazon ads are an incredible thing, not just from the direct sales. So for example, and by the way, I don't know if you can hear my kids, they're running upstairs.
I can't, but mine are doing the same.
Like every time I'm like, hey, I'm going to be on, Facebook Live, and they're like, cool. And then they decide to have a football game up above me. I don't know. But anyways, so the thing about it is that whether or not you do choose a keyword or you choose to write a book where there is an existing market on Amazon or not, the fact of the matter is that Amazon ads really help. They help not only make direct sales by getting your book in front of people, okay, and then people clicking and purchasing, but what they also do is they keep your book relevant, okay? A lot of authors see what I call the Amazon honeymoon, okay, period. When you go to launch your book, Amazon kind of gives you preferential treatment. You're the belle of the ball. They give you the benefit of the doubt. They show your book more often. You have better rankings in your keywords. You are seen more. And in that time, they're testing. They're trying to see whether or not your book is, relevant and popular. They're trying to figure out if when I show your book up here to my shoppers, this is me speaking like I'm Amazon, do my shoppers choose you or do they choose somebody else? And if everybody keeps choosing somebody else instead of yours, then I'm not going to put you up there, right? I'm not going to show you as often. And so in that 1 month period, you're sort of trying to prove yourself to Amazon. You're trying to prove that your book is worthy of being shown. One way that really helps this is by doing Amazon ads. We have found that Amazon does not decipher, oh, this came organically or this came from an ad. They just see that your book is selling, that it is showing that it is still relevant, that people like it. And so this can increase that honeymoon period for much longer. It can also help to get your book to stick and stay. A lot of people will see that their sales will dip down after a while and then just die. Amazon ads can re-bring it back into the populace and in front of people. And finally, too, another component to it is that some authors have, they have email lists. They have either a really great opt-in, so like if you're reading their book, you can get their companion course, or you can read a free prelude to the book that they're reading. And that can help them to generate and build their email list so that when they come out with their next book, right, they have more people to send to their next book. So again, there are a lot of just benefits that really come from Amazon ads. So whether or not you're writing whatever you feel like, or you're writing for a market, they can help.
Well, we've gotten a couple of questions and comments, so I want to make sure that I read these to you. So Catherine says, Dave, you definitely fall into my you post, I click category. Thank you for so generously sharing all of your knowledge.
Well, thank you.
And then Carolyn says, being 73, I really appreciate the fact that he designed this program that his grandmother can use. We elders are brilliant, just not tech savvy. And
the Muzzy factor.
Yes, exactly. And Catherine, a different Catherine, wants to know, you do a great job creating tools to address the most common Amazon pain points. If you had a magic wand, what is another pain point you'd address right at this moment? And then she said, doesn't have to be Amazon specific. So I guess maybe book selling, all that stuff specific.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of projects I've failed at. And maybe that's the best way to kind of, I'm always trying to I have a programming team and I'm an author and I'm always running into things I wish I could do. And so here's some of the projects that I just couldn't do. The first was I tried to once create an all-in-one dashboard for us to see every sale coming in from every market. And to link that more so with our Amazon ads so that we could see more insight. Here's the problem. So when I was creating this project, it was back when there was CreateSpace instead of KDP Print. And I was really wanting to build something where it would pull in your physical book sales and your ebook sales. And then it would also do iTunes and Barnes & Noble and Kobo and all those other markets out there. And it'd bring it in so you could have one dashboard. You could see how your book was doing as a whole. The problem, though, is that while we were creating it, the first thing was they got rid of CreateSpace and then they added to KDP Print. So that solved a big problem right there, which now you can see print and ebook in one shot. Awesome. The second thing, though, is that Amazon went very militant on not allowing programs to access, your dashboard, which, cool, that's a good thing, unless the author wanted them to. Right. And so we couldn't find a stable or secure way to be able to make sure that authors, so that we're not taking the information from your dashboard, but that we're presenting the information. There's a big difference in a cybersecurity world. And on top of that, too, I did not want authors to think, wait a second, I'm giving you too many rights. And you know what? You were. So that's why we're like, nope, scrap this project. We can't figure this out. Yeah. So I'll say that was one thing that I really focused on. Another thing, one wand that I would like to wave, and it's definitely something I'm looking at, and I guess this will probably be the first time I ever announce this, is that I wish that Scrivener, Google Docs, and Vellum got together and had a baby.
Oh, hallelujah.
I would love to have the writing functionality of Scrivener and the outlining capability. I would love to have collaboration capability like you do on Google Docs, where people, you can let somebody in and they can edit and change, or your editor can do their thing. Or when you're writing with another author, you can see real time as they write. And then with a click of a button, have the ease of formatting.
Yeah.
That would be incredible.
Get on that, because I think a lot of people would pay a lot of money for that tool.
Oh, and also it works on both PC and Mac.
Oh, yes, that's the big, I think I will say that's one of the most frustrating things about being an author in today's age is the wide variety of tools, and so many of them only answer one or two of the pieces that we need. I mean, right. The stack of tools that I have is ridiculous. And it's frustrating, time consuming, and just annoying, but
yeah, I just like the fact that, so people will pay for an outlining software, then they outline, then they have to export it, then they have to import it into their Scrivener or into whatever writing apparatus they're using. Then they have to export it, upload it to Google Docs so that they can do real-time collaboration, or they're exporting their Word document, emailing it to their editor, and then they have version control, problems that they have to worry about. Then when they're finally done, they're uploading it to Vellum to then format it and then send it. Or they're sending it to somebody who formats it, and oh, by the way, if you got to make a change, then you got to pay for the formatter to do it again. Yeah, just wow, way too many steps. Like, why not just have one? So
Well, you heard it here first, everybody. Dave is going to answer this question for us. Oh my gosh. Okay, so kind of to wrap things up for us, you've been very generous with your time today, but I would like to know a couple of things. One is that, is there anybody that you think that Publisher Rocket is not a good tool for? Like, is there anybody that you would say, I don't know that you're going to benefit from it? Has anybody ever asked you that before?
that's actually a really good question. It's an interesting thing because so Publisher Rocket is $97, and one of the things that I say, which is why I don't really know if I have a good answer for it, is that what is 1 hour of your time worth? Like, is it $20 an hour? And since it's a lifetime tool, so in the entire author writing lifetime, if the tool, say, saves you 5 hours total, right, then it pays for itself.
Right.
And if your time is only worth $10 an hour, well, then if it saves 10 hours in your entire author lifetime, it pays for itself. And so that's one way that I've kind of always looked at it. And that's why I really, really fight to keep our program as a lifetime one-time payment. And by the way, don't ever worry, anybody who's bought it, you get grandfather like ever. But we're adding so much. We're adding, for example, something that's coming out soon is historical category data. So you can look at a category and you can see how it's done historically over time. We have so many new features that we're adding soon. And like I said, it's one of those where whether you're doing research for your book, your next book, you're trying to come up with the keywords for the book you just wrote, if you're trying to find one of those 14,000 categories that really fits and gives you the best chance, if you're doing Amazon ads, not only should it help your results, but if it saves you at least 5 hours of time in your author lifetime, then it's good. So
yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I would only say that that's kind of one way that I look at it and why I really feel positive about where we're at with what we do. I think the other thing though is that for some people, I'll say that there's a group out there in the world that I kind of wish they didn't have it. We'll put it this way. I keep finding the software being used by like content generating machines out there. Certain countries in the world, will data mine it as much as possible to try to come up with other stuff. And I really don't like the idea that our data is being used to create lots of not so good books. I sometimes don't like the fact that maybe our data is being used to help books that were poorly put together. I believe in the Amazon environment. I like to keep it clean because this is our home. This is where we live as authors. And so that is one thing that we've really fought. We fought a lot of piracy, actually. We came out with new licensing system just a couple of weeks ago so as to make sure that these illegal uses stop. And that's been really costly and really time consuming. But again, I want to kind of protect our Amazon environment. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I asked myself the same question before I asked you because I work with authors who are children's book writers, memoir writers, fiction, nonfiction, like the whole gamut. And traditionally published, self-published, hybrid published. And I was like, is there anybody that couldn't benefit from this? And I couldn't think of anybody who could not benefit from it, simply because, like you said, even if you're just using it as research for your next book, seeing what's selling, seeing what's not selling, seeing what you're going to be competing against, and how to do your comp title research and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think it's an amazing tool. I love it. So I'm a big fan if you haven't figured that out yet. So Catherine also says, good to know. So she appreciated your answer. I purchased Rocket when you first offered it and haven't really known how to use it. Thank you for this class. You have tons of tutorials on your website. So Catherine.
I would say, Catherine, if you go to, if you open up Rocket, there's a little button on the bottom that says tutorials, or if you just go to the bottom of PublisherRocket.com, anybody can access our tutorials. So anybody who's thinking about it, you can go there. And on the left side, what I've done is that we have the feature tutorials that talk about how to use each feature. But on the right side, there's pertinent articles and videos that help to truly understand it. So maybe you're like, okay, cool, keywords. How do I choose the right one? Well, our tutorial shows you how to use the keyword feature, but the articles and videos to the right will turn you into a keyword master on its own. And in truth, if we really just compiled those list of resources that are on the right into a course, it would probably be one of those like expensive paid courses, but it's just
Yeah.
right there for anybody to use. Because I think that the more people understand about keywords and categories, the greater results they see, the happier customers they are. So we put it right there. And
Yeah.
you can also find the free course, the Amazon ads course, on the tutorial page as well.
Awesome. And if anybody just wants to see, you know, an average user stumbling around figuring the way out, I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel that you can watch too. So I think it's important, Dave. I really do think it's important sometimes to bring it down to like the beginner level of us trying to figure out, because then it, you know, you guys know the system so well, but definitely check out his tutorials, because I use the tutorials as well, all of that good stuff. But, you know, I mean, just to wrap up the point, the more you know about what you are doing, and if you're writing books and trying to make money, this is now either your part-time career or your full-time career, and you have to be good at it. You have to know what the tools are that are available. You have to know what's selling, why it's selling, where it's selling, and really know the ins and outs of categories, keywords, and other metadata that are going to make you competitive in your genre.
Yeah, and I would also go as far to say too, there's another type of author out there. A lot of authors are looking for the opportunity to become published, right? And to land those publishing deals. One of the things that I've seen as a consultant for publishing companies is that more and more they're starting to look at self-publishing as free agency. I'm going to pull that baseball term right in there, because, you know, celebrating first day of baseball. Yay! Everybody didn't see the beginning of this. The fact is that when self-publishers entered the world, a lot of publishing companies kind of thumb their nose at it, like, you know, they're not real writers, or blah, you know, we're not learning. But what they've started to see is that the self-publishers are really starting to take over the market, and that instead, why not look at these proven authors that have followings, that have great reviews, and of course must write good books. You can just go through, look at that free agency list, and see if you can convince them to come with you. And by the way, when the word convince comes in from the publisher side, that's a good thing. They now will give you good deals because they have to convince you to sign with them, instead of you trying to convince them to sign you. It's a much better negotiation tactic. So if you're sitting there saying to yourself, well, I'm going to write a good book and work with a publisher, that's cool. But do understand two things. First off, you do much better in the publishing world when you have proven success and you can really show that to them. And the second thing is that even when you do get that publishing deal, the publishers are going to usually do this thing where they say, great, you're signed, the book's coming out, we expect you to sell 25,000 copies by next quarter. Sound good? You're like, wait, I thought you were doing that. And I was like, yeah, we're doing something. Well, what are you doing? Well, we're doing these kind of couple things, but you need to sell 25. Okay. And then when you don't hit the 25,000 mark, they stop replying to your emails, or they, you know, you have that next book and they're like, So I would also throw that out to a lot of the people who aren't just looking at self-publishing, but looking at publishing, and realize you're going to have to, you know, more so each and every day, publishers are looking at self-publishers and trying to find ways to get them on board.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good piece of information. We had one more question come in from Alyssa. For a new member to Rocket, what feature do you think is the most important place to start and learn? She's launching a new book, first time. Yay!
Well, I'm partial for the keyword feature because, and we have an article on the tutorials called 7 Kindle Keyword Boxes. Okay, so when you go to publish your book, you need to put keywords into one of your 7 Kindle boxes, right? Because you know, I call them boxes. Well, the key is that key. Sorry, unintended pun. The key to the box is that you can put 50 characters in there. That's letters, spaces, etc. that amount to 50. So a lot of people have always asked the question, should I just fill as many words into each box as possible, or should I just find the phrase that I want and put that phrase in there? So we did an experiment using all of our awesome Kindlepreneur followers who filled out the surveys and worked with us, and we're talking like hundreds of books. And we changed the keywords from filling up the boxes to just specifics, and we designed this special code that was able to check to see how many things they ranked for as well as how well they ranked for them. And we were able to come out with a definitive guide for exactly what you should do. And you know, for those who don't want to read it quickly, I would say select 4 of those boxes and fill them as much as possible. select 3, and put in only the phrases you truly want to. And that combination of the two is by far the best strategy. So when you're coming out with your book, be sure to check out those articles on the right to the keyword feature tutorial and read through them. That will really help your book show up more often on Amazon and rank better so as to get in front of the shoppers you think are the best kind of reader for your book. And if you do that right, you're going to see this continuous sales growth instead of a peak and then a drop after your marketing efforts are over. So give that a whirl. And again, check out those articles / videos to the right of the tutorial video so you can really nail that 7 Kindle keyword boxes.
That's a phenomenal little nugget of information. I remember when you guys did the survey and we're asking for everybody to put their stuff out there, but I have not gone back in yet to read the results. So that's on my to-do list because that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of, the thing is that in the publishing world, there's been a lot of like speculation or people think or believe. And so the coolest thing is that the Kindlepreneur group, the people that follow have been so awesome to allow us to say, okay, well, let's figure this out. Let's experiment with thousands of books, thousands of different authors, both fiction and nonfiction, and make sure that there are no, differences. And it's really allowed us to answer a whole bunch of questions. One of the ones we did recently was, do words in your book description help or not? Do they index? And we got a definitive answer for that. We've also just done a large study on the number of pages a book in certain genres should be based off of marketing data, and a whole bunch more. So just fun really numbers.
Cool. So you're one of those crazy left brain, right brain people because you also write fiction. So we'll end this on a personal note. How are your fiction books coming along? Have you even had time to write while you've been doing all of this?
Yeah, so it's funny is that my fiction got put on hold because I've been working a lot more with a bunch of fiction writers. I have been blessed to be able to work with like Orson Scott Card, Kevin J. Anderson, Ted Decker. I'm also scheduled to meet up with Brandon Sanderson, which, like, I'm sorry, I'm fangirl screaming on that one. Brandon Sanderson's my all-time favorite fantasy writer. I think he is the J.R.R. Tolkien of our time.
Wow.
And I will say that right now. The dude just did a Kickstarter for his Way of Kings book, right? And all it was, so that was his popular book series, right? And he did a Kickstarter, and all he did was a leather-bound edition of it, and it looks really cool. He raised $4 million in the first day. Broke Kickstarter record for a book that everybody already read. So I mean, I don't know how much marketing I want to teach him, but that's awesome. And also another is Timothy Zahn, who is the guy who did the Thrawn books of Star Wars, which like, if you know my bookshelf over there, like it's full of Thrawn books. He's my favorite Star Wars character. So it's funny is that I've started to really kind of work with them, and it's great because as I'm giving recommendations or we're talking, I'm also like scribbling down notes. I'm like, oh, so that's how you do the character building. Oh, funny hats. I like that idea. Wait a second. Magic systems? I never thought of that. So I'm like, and then I get, shall we say, writer paralysis because I'm just like, I need to incorporate that.
Never make it.
Yeah. What was I thinking? Oh, don't do that. Oh, so needless to say, it's really slowed me down, but in the same time, like we were talking about, right? Writing is this process, and you really hone that skill over time. And I'm in it for the long run. And so if it means learning, if it means studying, if it means being a student to the art, so be it. I'm 37. Just turning 37. I actually had to think about that. I'm 37 years old. Got 20 plus years, and writing as much as I want in retirement. So I don't know. I look at all of it as the long haul because this is a career.
Exactly. Well, this has been a great interview. Especially with all that you have going on. I can't tell you how much I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come in and do this interview. I like to see the good guys win. So it's been really nice to see you just like explode everywhere. Like everybody is Dave.
Thank you.
So that's awesome. But you're doing good stuff. And you make a very, very great point. It's $97, which is ridiculously inexpensive in the world of tech tools and things like that, especially for the amount that you can gain from it. Lifetime, I can tell you for a fact, I just got a new update today when I turned it on. It's continuously being updated and improved and new things added. And it's probably one of the top 3 investments I have made in my entire author career. So go get it. Go get it. We've got links. We've got links. But thank you for sharing your time with us today. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the crowd?
One word of advice, especially when it comes to marketing, is I try to tell people that, especially when you first start and you launch your book, so many people see all the different marketing tactics they can do. They see this. Oh, somebody said Pinterest. Hey, look at that. I should go. The problem is that when you start to try to do it all, what you ultimately do is you dabble in them all. Okay. And when you dabble in things, you really get nothing done. My recommendation, especially to a first author that's publishing their first book, is select a finite number of marketing efforts and dig in and really do those well. I assure you, you will see much better results by doing 3 things really well than 15 things not so well. Okay. And then as you come out with your next book, you have experience on those 3, you can maybe add 3 more. Okay. And now you do 6 things really well. And you just keep growing as you go through with your books. And that, I think, is really where you start to see certain authors really hit those next levels until finally they're at the point that they want to be. And so my recommendation is choose certain things and do them really well.
I couldn't agree more. What a great piece of advice to leave this with. I used to be an Air Force intel officer, and they called us the jack of all trades, the master of none, because we knew about this deep across the board on so many different type of things. Thank goodness for our NCOs, right? But
amen to that.
Let Publisher Rocket be your NCO if you have any idea what that means. So this has been phenomenal. I appreciate you, and we'll hopefully be sending a lot more traffic your way.
Well, and again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.